All right, everybody, good evening. My name is Eric Hayden. I'm a meteorologist with the Weather Service in Morehead City. It's just about 6:31, so we'll go ahead and get started. This is our online winter SKYWARN presentation. In a second, I'm going to ask you if you've ever attended a class before, because we usually like to start off with that. For some of you that logged on earlier, this is a repeat, but if you can see me, and especially if you can see the presentation, you're good to go. You've got the presentation in addition in your handout section, so please, if you want to download the presentation as a PDF, just click on the handout section and you'll be able to do that. In addition, we put the spotter certificate in there as well. If you are having any trouble tonight, don't worry about it. We will follow up with an email tomorrow morning with a copy of the presentation and also the certificate itself. So you should be in good shape. Some technical information. We've done these classes for a while now, but this could be your first time. Your microphones have been muted, so you don't have to worry about background noise. I know it's getting toward bedtime for some folks, especially with young kids. Don't worry about it. You're good to go with that. You can make the presentation larger. So if you're seeing me and half the screen is the presentation and you're on a personal computer, just stretch it out and make the presentation larger if that's what you want. If you are on a mobile device, Android, iPhone, just swipe to the right or left and you can go full screen me, or you can go full screen presentation. So you should be good with that as well. If anything is unclear, you've got some questions, ask them at any time. And then at the very end, we'll take questions and we'll go over them. In addition, at the end, if you want to do some talking yourself, raise your hand. On the far right, there's a little hand feature and you'll just click raised hand. And then I'll call on you and then I'll unmute your microphone and you have to make sure you do the same on your end, and then you can ask a verbal question if you want to do that. I already mentioned that the presentation and the certificate is in the handout section, so please look for those, download them, and I'll send a follow-up email tomorrow just in case you have any issues. This is recorded. We'll post this on YouTube, so if you miss anything, you know of a neighbor that perhaps wants to attend and just couldn't, please share that link with them. So we've got most folks logged on. Let's just make sure we've got most everybody online. So that's very, very good. So I'm gonna ask you a quick poll question because I like to gauge the audience to know, is this the first time that you've been with us? Have you done these classes before? So on your screen, you should see a question, and the question is this your first spotter class with us? Pretty easy answer. Again, each presentation is pretty similar, but I will change things slightly if we have a lot of new people or a lot of people that have been here before. So we've got, looks like just about everybody has voted. So let's go ahead and close the poll and let's see what we've got here. Let's see. So most of you have, trying to share there we go. Want to share the results with you all. So about 60 to 40. So about 60% of you've been with us before. Welcome back. You're going to notice a repeat. All our SKYWARNs kind of start off the same, who we are, what the Weather Service does, and then of course this one will focus on winter hazards. For you new folks, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you join us again. We do these year-round. The most popular ones are probably in the spring and summer because those focus on tornadoes and things like that. So those are certainly more popular than the winter one, especially in the Carolinas. So our agenda, maybe an hour tops for the class. We're going to go over who the Weather Service is. Why do we need spotters? We'll certainly cover that. We're going to talk about winter preparedness, some of the things that we can get here in the Carolinas, including nor'easters, ice storms, snowstorms. And then the main second part of the class is the most important. When, how, what should you be reporting to the Weather Service? It's great that you know what a nor'easter is. It's great that you know how ice storms form, but the real important stuff for us is reporting that information to us. And then at the very end of the class, probably after we're done, you can log off if you want, but we do have some wintry weather perhaps headed our way tomorrow and tomorrow night. So I'll probably stop the recording at that point and let people log off if they want, and we'll just kind of do a little powwow on the potential snow headed our way. Not a lot, but since it's in the forecast, we may as well talk about it. So our mission for the Weather Service, protection of life and property, enhance the national economy. So any of the big stuff you see, storm-wise, tornadoes, hurricanes, snowstorms, ice storms, we issue watches, warnings, and advisories for those. In addition, we do forecasts out to 7 days. What to wear, how much is it going to rain, how windy will it be, and a lot of specialized forecasts for the aviation community, the marine community, going out on boats and doing fishing, and also the fire weather community. So lots of specialized forecasts, and that's kind of what separates us from a lot of folks in terms of forecasting. We do a lot of specialized forecasts for the general public and just everybody, you the everyday citizen. As far as our locations, we're going to focus on our office here in Eastern North Carolina, but we have over 100 offices in the United States. So each dot on this map represents a local office. You'll notice some different colors, yellows and blues and reds on the map. Those are just different regions of the Weather Service, but we have a lot of local offices, then also national centers like the Storm Prediction Center in Oklahoma, the Hurricane Center down in Miami. So a lot of offices to serve your needs. And the big reason for that, we'll talk a little bit about the radar coverage in a second, but also knowing your local community, living in it, experiencing the weather makes you a much better forecaster. I think most of our forecasts or people taking this class are from our area. I'll talk about not being from our area in a second. This is where we cover. We cover the land area covered in yellow, so roughly places like Greenville, Jacksonville, the Outer Banks, out to 20 nautical miles, we do forecasts and warnings for, and then out to 60 miles, we do warnings. So a big chunk of Eastern North Carolina, you folks up in Northeast North Carolina, your office is the Richmond or Wakefield office. Central North Carolina is Raleigh, and then down south is covered by Wilmington. So again, as you saw from that previous image, lots of local offices to cover your needs. At the end of the talk, I give, or toward the end, I give an 800 number. All of that is specific to the Morehead City office. So if you do live outside of our area, it's not a problem. Just follow up with me afterwards and we'll get you hooked up with your local office. Reporting snow is the same whether you live in here or Spokane, Washington. It's just the number and the way to report. The numbers, the emails, those will be different. So one thing with weather, if you've got some young people, if we've got some young people on today, it's a very exciting career, but it is 24/7, 365. A case in point, it's what, 6:38, and I'll be working tonight from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So we have rotating shifts, much like police and fire and first responders. If you come visit me tonight, there's only going to be 2 of us. If you were to visit me during Florence, like this picture, the whole office is there. So it just depends. With our proximity to the coast, we are prepared to stay for hurricanes. This is our building. It's a brick reinforced building, and it has hurricane shutters. This is my office. That's where I slept for a couple days during Florence. Very, very safe location. And again, we're up high and reinforced. Many offices are like that. A little different on the coast. We're a little bit more prepared in terms of being able to stay at work, but all offices are meant to weather bad weather so that we can stay in place even when things get nasty. One of the best ways to get information from us is our website. It's weather.gov/Morehead City. With that, you can click on the map. You can enter your city or zip code in the upper left, and you can get a detailed forecast. This works anywhere. So if you're going down to Myrtle Beach to vacation, you're going out to Yellowstone this summer to do vacation, weather.gov, click on where you're interested, and your local office will provide the forecast. Really, really good stuff. One of the first things you'll notice is the 7-day forecast. This is just the generic forecast that you probably are all used to. How warm is it going to be? What's the temperature? Is it going to rain or not? So very, very generic forecast, but there are some more details, especially if you scroll down the page. I always encourage folks to scroll a little bit farther down. You can get things like the hourly forecast and even graphical forecasts as well. Since we're talking winter weather, we do have a winter weather section of our page. If you scroll down on our page, I encourage you to look at a lot of the icons that we have. One is a snowflake, so you know that that's our winter page, or you can just go to it weather.gov/Morehead City/winter. That's where you can get the snow forecast, a snow probability, which shows the worst case scenario, or how much snow we expect even in a least case, and snow thresholds. We'll talk about that in a second. It is active because we do have some snow in the forecast, so I'll show you kind of a live image of that. One more thing about our website, and then we'll move on. I mentioned there's a lot of icons at the bottom. Here's our SKYWARN one. I mentioned the winter. There's a winter one. There's one called a weather hazard briefing. These are created prior to big events, certainly hurricanes, but also major winter storms. If you click on that and we're anticipating a winter storm, this is what you would see. Images like this. This is from last year where we had a little bit of snow in February. That was pretty much it. And this is a more significant storm 3 years ago now, January 2018, our snowfall forecast. It's a PDF document. You can load it up on your phone or your personal computer, usually 5 to 10 slides, and a lot of really, really good information on that. So I encourage you to look for it. We're certainly on social media, the big three, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, and we're proud that we're a test office for Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, help us. We just got on and don't have a lot of people following us, so please share the word. And the easiest way to find any of them is NWS for National Weather Service, Morehead City. These are some examples of what we post. This is an example of Twitter prior to Florence, really trying to emphasize that the category of the storm is only related to wind. Please don't let your guard down about flooding. We certainly saw that. And on the right is an example of YouTube. Those briefings we do, often we do audio webinars for our core partners. We will record those and put them on YouTube, and this got about 12,000 views, so pretty popular stuff on our social media. So at this point, if we have any new people joining us, again, ask a question at any point. We'll take those at the end. The big point of those slides was Weather Service, protection of life and property, open 24/7. Weather.gov is the best place to get the information directly from our website. Want to talk now about one thing that we're doing new this year, kind of a test. So if you have any feedback, we always welcome that. It's called the Winter Storm Severity Index, WSSI. And the whole design of that was to look at a whole bunch of winter impacts that can occur and summarize them, either one by one, things like snow amount, blowing snow, ice accumulation, or summary of all the bad impacts. What are our potential impacts from all of them combined? And the real point of this was, if I show you a snow map and it's 6 inches of snow everywhere, we know we're going to have an impact because we don't get snow here often. But what if I show you a map that has very little snow on it and it has a ice amount of 1/4 of an inch? Do you know what 1/4 of an inch really does? This is going to help with that. If we start to see moderate, major, and especially extreme impacts, we know those are pretty rare scenarios for folks to take serious. So there's a lot of images on this, so let's break it down one by one. And I want you to start in the lower left. So we're going to start on this graphic. And this is an example from the past. This is up toward Massachusetts and Connecticut and southern New Hampshire, Vermont, so kind of the Northeast. The image on the lower left is snow amount. And again, the colors show you the yellow is minor, moderate is orange, and then the major impacts are starting to get into the red. So on this example for just snow, the major impacts in red would be up towards southern Vermont, western Massachusetts. That would be pinpointed on a snow map. But notice the other graphics paint a different story. The second graphic is snow load, and what that means is how wet or how heavy the snow is. And notice that this red is now in central Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire toward Maine. So much different area than the one on the left. And then the third graphic is ice, and still another area is impacted. In this case, it's from roughly Boston down through Rhode Island and Connecticut. Very, very major impacts expected with ice. So 3 different things: a whole bunch of snow on this graphic, the middle one, a lot of wet snow clinging to everything, bringing down power lines, potentially some power issues, and then the last one, just ice. 3 different locations impacted. If we showed you a traditional snow map, your eyes would be drawn to just the heavy snow to the north and west. So you put it all together, and this is WSSI right here. So it's showing the heavy snow toward Albany, New York, the heavy wet snow just west of Boston, and then the ice south of Boston down toward near Providence, and then portions of eastern Connecticut. So a new product, pretty neat stuff. I was remiss, I didn't say this in the beginning. In your follow-up email, probably tomorrow, because I'm working tonight, so I may as well send it out. We'll have your certificate and some links, and these will be included in that. So you'll see a bunch of links here, our website, this one right here. Feel free to jot it down and visit it right now, but you'll be provided some follow-up links here overnight. So this is where you can find it. You can zoom in, you can toggle on just snow, just ice, whatever you want. If you're really into it, you can download it into Google Earth, and you'll probably see these in our briefings, especially if we get a big storm this winter. So that's just something new I wanted to talk about since this is Winter SKYWARN. So for those that have been into the class before, you've heard this. For our new folks, welcome again. This is a volunteer program run by the Weather Service, and the whole goal is to hear from you. What is happening on the ground? Not when it's sunny, not when it's 50 degrees and blue skies, when there's weather. So in this case, we're talking wintertime weather. How much snow or ice do you have? Spotters really help us. You assist in our process. In the summertime, we talk about how your estimates of hail, or if there's a tornado or high winds, can prompt us to keep warnings going or even issue new ones. With snowfall, you're really confirming what is happening on the ground. Our Doppler radar is great. It'll show us precipitation. We can surmise from the temperatures in the atmosphere if it's snowing or sleeting or freezing rain. But you tell us it's sticking on the grass, it's sticking on the road, how bad is it? And so we really try to emphasize with you that the trained eye of our storm spotters is still our biggest asset. I want to talk a little briefly on technology, some limitations of it. So we've got a Doppler radar, fantastic. It's not the only tool in our tool belt. We've got satellite that can update as frequently as a minute to 5 minutes. Very good. It was upgraded a couple years ago. We have surface observations, we have spotters. So we use all of that to make decisions. However, we lean on radar quite heavily. And the graphic on the right illustrates some limitations of the radar, especially with regards to snow and especially shallow clouds. So in this example, this is our radar, and it sends out a beam of radiation into the sky. And if it bounces off a particle, dust, raindrop, hailstone, and bounces back, we can tell the intensity of it. That's the radar itself. And it's pointed up at 0.5 degrees elevation. So this black line signifies the lowest scan of the radar. And because the Earth is curved, the farther and farther away that beam gets away, it gets higher up. So if you live in Newport or Morehead City, you're really close to the radar. We can see down near the ground. Up toward the Outer Banks, we're higher up. It doesn't mean we can't see. It doesn't mean the radar is unusable. It just means that there's a limitation. And that limitation shows up in the wintertime. This example here on the left, we'll call these snow clouds, 5, 10, 15,000 feet tall. We can see those close to the radar, but as they get farther away, harder to see. We don't have that issue in the summertime. Thunderstorms are much taller, 30, 40, 60,000 feet tall. But certainly in the wintertime, sometimes it's so shallow, we can't see the snow. Luckily, a lot of times it's when it's really weak, flurries, real light stuff. But nonetheless, just emphasizing that we need your reports. Please, let us know what's going on in your community. You'll notice a theme here, re-emphasizing that we really need your reports to let us know what's going on in the community. All of these letters are airport codes. If you've ever flown, you've seen these. RDU, Raleigh, BWI up in Baltimore, ILM, Wilmington, that type of thing. So PGV is Greenville, ISO is Kinston, so lots of weather stations all across eastern North Carolina. You'll notice there are some gaps, but still, pretty good coverage. 24/7 temperature, wind speed, rainfall, cloud cover, great stuff. Doesn't have snow. Only 2 sites have snow. We have an observer in New Bern, and we have an observer near Hatteras. Real people that measure the snow, and that's it. Very limited coverage in terms of official, snowfall observations for our office. Contrast that last image with the most recently trained spotters. This is not all our spotters in the database, but these are our most recent ones in terms of training. You'll notice lots of yellow dots. So again, re-emphasizing you matter, your reports matter. Are there some gaps? Yes. So if you have a neighbor, a friend, if you know somebody that lives in some of these areas, Martin County, Washington County, Terrell County, Beaufort County, they're more rural areas, so of course we're not going to have as many. Nonetheless, it's still really important to have as many as possible. So we really need your reports, and we certainly appreciate it. Now we're going to transition a little bit to the winter forecast that came out. This was back in October. Not a lot of big changes. This is for the rest of the winter. So we've already had December, January, and February. So we're a third of the way there. The official forecast is above normal temperatures are favored slightly, but we like to emphasize that periods of cold and snow and ice are still possible, and just really emphasizing with folks that it just takes one event. I don't spend a lot of time on the climate forecast because they are long-range forecast, and a lot of it's influenced week by week by variables that can't be predicted more than a couple weeks out. The other thing is these contours represent percentages and confidence. So when you get down to here, 60, 70% confidence, that means it's pretty unlikely it's going to be a cold winter down there. You know, it could be near normal to above average, but very, very unlikely it's going to be cold. Where we are, this lighter shade, above normal is slightly favored, but we still could have kind of a near normal winter. Below normal, certainly not favored. However, and it's not a catch-22, we've already seen this winter. Overall, it's been mild. Have we had some cold mornings? Yes. Are we going to potentially see some snow tomorrow night? Probably. So again, you can still have periods of cold and winter, so we don't focus too much on the climate outlook. Really want folks to prepare for that one storm that can happen any given year. As far as precipitation goes, again, slightly favored for below normal precipitation. This would be a change. 2020 was one of the wetter years, not the wettest, but one of the wetter years we've seen. Obviously, 2018 was the biggest one for most of us. All right, so we talked about the Weather Service, climate forecasts, WSSI, now the fun stuff. Not that that wasn't fun. Snow, ice, nor'easters, cold outbreaks. Let's get going with some of the weather we can have. Would be remiss if we don't talk a little bit about weather preparedness. You can find more information on our website. Again, we'll send you these links in your email. For home, not a lot that you have to do, especially if you have a hurricane kit, which you should have. If you haven't eaten through it like I have, some of our snacks sometimes I kind of rummage through, especially once hurricane season is done. You should already have a couple days worth of food, water, and medicine. The closer you are to the coast, the more important this is. So that's why I'm not spending a lot of time on at home, because in reality, we all should be prepared for those hurricanes, really May through November where we live. The road one, I'll spend a little more time on. Winterizing your vehicle, checking the forecast, those are all important things. Let's face reality, it's unlikely you're going to get stuck in a major snowstorm in eastern North Carolina. I'll give you that, but it could happen. What I want to talk about more is when you go to Boone, or you visit family in Ohio or West Virginia or Maryland, chances increase that you're going to travel through some wintry weather. So it's always good to have some extra things in your car. We're not talking about the whole kitchen sink, but extra hat, gloves, warm clothes, that if you get stranded for a couple hours and the car doesn't work, you'll stay warm. And the thing I really like to highlight is checking the forecast and just avoiding travel. I know in our busy lives, it's really hard to make changes sometimes, but in reality, really, really bad weather, how long does it last? 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, and then it's over with. So check that forecast. In some cases, you can travel a day earlier or a day later and you completely avoid it. So always consider that. And the last item is dressing. Most of us are in this chilly category, just an extra layer. If we do get cold, or like January 2018 cold, think layers, hat, gloves, and then thicker socks for the extremities. So layering and extremities are the big ones with that. All right, so for those that have been in our spring class, we talk about what makes severe weather, and we talk about certain ingredients. Same thing with a winter storm. And just like if you were to make brownies tonight or cookies, send them here if you do that. You can't just say, you know what, I don't have eggs, I'm just going to skip it this time. Or I ran out of oil, I'm just going to skip it. Not going to work out. Same thing with a winter storm. You got to have cold air. You know, it can't be 45 degrees and expect a snowstorm. You have to have precipitation around clouds, moisture, and you have to have rising air, which is called lift in the environment. We'll talk about that in a second. So the first ingredient is the one that we usually don't have. We're really close to the ocean. We live farther south, and we're just not cold enough often. Do we have nights in the 20s and 30s? Yes, but that's usually when it's clear and calm out. So if we're lacking anything for winter weather, it's almost always cold air. And for cold air, you want to see a big area of high pressure to the north. And the reason for that is the flow around high pressure is clockwise. So as this air flows around, it's pulling down cold air from Canada and filtering it down toward us on a northeast type of wind. So any storm we get, and we'll show you some examples, you got to have a source of cold air. The second ingredient is moisture. We'll go through this quick because I can't think of the last time we were just too dry to have snow in our area. We live by the ocean. If we don't have that, we've got the Gulf of Mexico to our south, so moisture is not a problem. The last ingredient is something we're missing sometimes. It's a source of lift. A storm has to happen at the right time for it to snow. And it's real simplistic, but think about it. Our cold mornings when it's a clear sky, it's cold enough, but it's a clear sky, we don't have any moisture, and we don't have a lifting mechanism, a storm system to get things going. So you need an area of low pressure. It's kind of neat. The western part of the state gets this a lot. Just air flowing over a mountain is a source of lift. This is why they see a lot of snow in places like Boone, up toward Blowing Rock, the western end of the mountains. The eastern end toward Charlotte, this is why they usually don't see a lot of upslope events. As the air descends out of a mountain, it dries and warms. So you certainly need a source of lift. Another source of lift are fronts, cold and warm fronts. They provide that. The example on the right is a cold front. Cold air is pushing in to the atmosphere and it's lifting the warm air up ahead of it. And the example on the bottom is a warm front. That is allowing the warm air to come up and ride up over the cold air that's already in place. Both scenarios cause rising air. Cold fronts are usually deeper and can produce some heavier precipitation, and we certainly see this in the summertime with severe weather. So it's just about 7 o'clock. We're going through our storms. The first big one, nor'easters. This is our storm. If we're going to see something, it's a track like this. It may not be classified as a nor'easter every time, but we need a track off the coast. And I'll show you some examples here in a second. So a nor'easter develops, it moves up the coast, and depending on the track is where the heavy snow falls. All about the track. To the left of the track, it's moist enough and cold enough for wintry weather. Along and east of the track, it's usually too warm. It's certainly too warm to the east of the track, but along it, questionable, but usually too warm. And the reason for that is the opposite of high pressure. Winds flow counterclockwise around an area of low pressure. So if you're to the right or on the east side, your winds are southerly, southeasterly, and our ocean is still warm in the 50s, even near 70 for the Gulf Stream. So that's why you do not want to be on the right side of the track. You want to be on the left side or the northwest side for snowfall amounts. So we never like to show things without some examples. This is a really good example recently. I say recent, but time is certainly flying by. 3 years ago, almost to the day, we did a post on this on Facebook the other day. The example on the right is just after midnight. Heavy snow is falling across all of eastern North Carolina, maybe a mix still down at the coast. And again, where's our high pressure? There it is up toward Philadelphia. Where's our low pressure? Off the coast. So for us, a lot of times they track right along the coast and across the Outer Banks, too close. Sometimes they track up toward Raleigh. For us, it has got to be off the coast. The farther, the better. For us to see a snow, Raleigh and Richmond usually do not. There's that sweet spot. You know, you want to be close enough to the storm to have moisture, but not too close that you're influenced by warm air. If you've just moved to the area, you might be surprised. We had 7 inches of snow with this, not unusual. Doesn't happen every year, but we certainly have had that before. Pretty much everybody had an inch or two, and then the bullseye was 7 to 8 across the central part of our area. The most noteworthy thing with that storm was the cold. The next couple days were highs below freezing for many of us, and single digits above and below 0. This is January 7th in the morning, still in the teens by the water. Keep in mind that the water where we live really modifies our temperature, but you get a couple miles away from the water, 2 in Jacksonville, -1 in Greenville. So that snow stuck around for days and days and days. That is more rare around here. Usually our snow is gone by afternoon. Even some of the major roads had snow on it for many days. This is a Pamlico River, Taylor's Creek. So the smaller creeks, the edges of the sounds froze over. Again, if you just moved here, 3 years ago, we had ice on our waterways. So it can get cold. That was historic cold, probably every 100 years. That was or 1 in 100 chance any given year. But this is a satellite image showing the snow the morning after, or excuse me, many days after, because you can see the southern part of the Albemarle Sound, the Pamlico Sound, anywhere where it's more shallow and towards shoreline, froze. Not enough to drive on it, but certainly impressive. A couple weeks later, another nor'easter. But again, you notice the same thing. You can't quite see it on this map, but high pressure is to our west this time, but the flow clockwise is a northerly flow of air. And more importantly, our storm track is off the coast. We just got a couple inches of snow. This was really not noteworthy for most of us, other than it happened twice in 2 weeks. And it was a typical southern snow. In my house, it was gone by afternoon. So 1-2 inches of snow, we get out of school and work. By afternoon, it's gone. Except if you live up in Kitty Hawk or Manio, you folks had about 10 inches. So it definitely stayed around longer up there. We'll go by these kind of quick. These are the biggies. Christmas 1989. This is not a misprint. 15 to 20 inches of snow from our area, Morehead City, Jacksonville. It's a big storm where the lowest amounts, poor Martin County, Greenville, Pitt County, 5 to 7 was the least we saw. So that's a doozy. These are pictures from Carteret County. It happened a couple days before Christmas, but it wasn't going anywhere when you see that much snow. And it also got really cold. Some of our big storms that happens, raise your hand virtually at home. I can't see you, but raise your hand if you've heard of, when you hear thunder, within 10 days, you'll have snow. Some validity to it. Obviously, it doesn't happen every single time. The logic behind it is Mother Nature likes to balance out. So if you get that warm to support thunderstorms, it usually means you're in the 60s or 70s. So if the seesaw goes up that much, it's got to even out by coming down at the other end. So usually it's going to get pretty cold in the next 10 days. So that's the analogy of that. Of course, a couple weeks ago, we had thunderstorms, tornado warnings, and the very next day we had flurries in Greenville. So tell your friends and neighbors. Obviously, it's not 100% true all the time, but usually if you have really warm weather, especially thunderstorm type weather, it's going to get cold in the not too distant future, usually the next week to 10 days, because Mother Nature likes to balance out. More pictures from the Christmas '89 storm. The biggest one we've had, March 1980. I'm a snow fan, so you're probably going to kill me if I say this, but I wouldn't mind this this year. 20 to 30 inches. Look at that, Cape Carteret, Cedar Point, Bogue, Ocean, those places, 30 inches of snow. I just can't imagine it. And again, our least amount of snow, looks like maybe we didn't have as much on the Outer Banks, if this is accurate, but the lower amounts were around only a foot. So it's a pretty big storm. One of our former forecasters sent this picture in from Beaufort, showing the drifts up against his house. Pretty impressive. So we talked a lot about snow. Now we want to talk about ice and some of the other types of weather that we can get. This is a really good graphic. If it's near or below freezing, from where the cloud is all the way down to the surface, we get snow. Can you have snow at 38, 36 degrees? Yeah. if that layer is really, really thick and it's only right at the ground, you're above freezing. But for all intents and purposes, below freezing the whole way, it's snow. Where you start to have some issues is when it starts to warm up. Think back to that graphic that I went through with warm air. Cold air is dense. It just sits where it is, doesn't want to budge. When warm air comes in, it's lighter, so it rides up, and the first thing it impacts is higher up in the clouds. So this is where we get sleet and freezing rain. Sleet happens when there's a layer of warm air. It melts that snowflake into a raindrop, but there's still enough cold air around, it refreezes into an ice pellet. That's the thing you hear clinging on your windows and on your house. Similar process for freezing rain, but the layer of warm air is much, much deeper. So it melts into a raindrop, just like a sleet pellet, but it never gets a chance to refreeze until it makes contact with something. Power lines, trees, the ground. So in that case, it's below freezing the surface, but just a couple hundred feet above us, it's above freezing. That's really the worst case because it can cause issues with travel for sure, but power outages and communication issues. And then rain is that we're below freezing, or above freezing most of the way. Maybe up in the clouds it starts as snow, but it melts and it safely comes all the way to the ground as rain because we're above freezing. So we mentioned ice. Freezing rain is probably the worst type, and that can produce ice storms. The heavy weight can cause issues, communication issues, power lines down, big consequences with that. Another thing I want to mention beyond winter weather that you think of, we mentioned snow, we mentioned ice, coastal storms. If you live along the waterway, and I'm not just talking about the ocean front, we have big issues. Some of our biggest water issues are winter storms, not hurricanes. It's not because hurricanes can't produce issues. It's as frequently as we get hurricanes where we are, it's even more frequent that we get nor'easters and coastal storms. Every year I've been here, we have a handful. We've already had them this year. So this is a couple years ago. It shows the flooding up in Avon, the Outer Banks, Northern Outer Banks area. And check out these gusts, almost, hurricane force, Cedar Island, 64 miles per hour, 66 Oregon Inlet. So very, very impressive wind and flooding. It can cause flooding, but also low water. So if you've ever had an issue taking the ferry to work, sometimes they're not running because of low water. Navigational issues. This is an image from ITN showing the Pamlico River, boats stranded because the water has gone away. Our sounds, specifically Pamlico Sound, very, very shallow. So if all of the water goes one way, Hatteras Island, Ocracoke, Avon, Buxton, Manio, they flood. And then at the other end, very, very shallow, the water blows out and goes away. And this graph didn't go below ground, but compared to the datum, it shows how much the water level dropped at our gauge in Washington. Many, many months later, same crazy year, 2018 was the year we had the snow, tornadoes on Emerald Isle and Florence. So it was pretty wild. Almost hurricane force gusts again, Ocracoke 70, and that's some flooding there. I don't have it in this year's presentation, but we've already seen some of those events. A couple weeks ago, we had 60, 70 mile per hour gusts and then very strong storms with a strong cold front. So that can certainly happen. All right, we're about 7:10. We're right on time, about another 10, maybe 15 minutes. This is a part I really want you to pay attention to. All the other stuff was, just for fun and what winter weather is all about. The next couple slides, we're going to go over reporting. Then it's your turn. Any questions you have, ask in the chat, the platform. I don't see any yet. I do see some hands raised, so I'll call on you. I see Scarlett, you've got your hand raised. So at the end, if you still do want to ask a question, leave that up, Scarlett, or anybody else, and we'll call on you. So about 10, 15 more minutes, and then we'll get you out of here. So snowfall, we want to know, we want you to know where, what, when to measure, how to make snowfall reports, and we're most concerned with the storm total, how much fell at the end, by the end of the storm. And this is real important stuff. A lot of you may have automated rain gauges, thermometers, things that you can read from the comfort of your home. Snowfall measurements take more time, but all those graphics I showed you would not be possible without spotters. We wouldn't know what happened. So we really need those reports, not just us in the Weather Service, but Public Works, media, climatologists. A lot of folks are looking at that data, and we certainly appreciate it. The first step in snow measuring starts today, tonight, tomorrow, finding a good spot. The best site is an open area away from tall objects, buildings, and trees, but not right in the middle of like a farm field where it drifts. So kind of in between, protected, but not too close to stuff. Not all places are going to be perfect. Do the best you can. I'm going to show you ideal. You get as close as you can to that. So this is ideal. Open field, away from trees, but the perimeter is protected. It's secluded. It's a good windbreak. So if you live in a suburban lot like me, you get away from the house, you go in the middle of your backyard, that's your best spot. If you're in an urban location or forest, you do the best you can. You might have trees all over or buildings all over. You get as far away as you can, call it the end of the day. We don't expect everybody to have a backyard like this. Just trying to emphasize what's not good so you can stay away from it. So these are some examples. I love pictures and backing things up. This is snow measured under a tree. Hey, 3 inches. What's the problem, Eric? You got the ruler in the snow. How bad could it be? Same spot, 6.5, middle of his yard. This is typical suburban house. Again, just don't measure under a tree. Get away from it, and you'll be good to go. What can you use to measure? Pretty simple. If you have a ruler, a yardstick, if we're going to get like a March 1980 storm, any of those will work. We do want you to measure to the nearest 1/10 of an inch, certainly not whole inches only. So not 5, 6, 7 inches, unless it's even, right at 7 inches. 5.5, 5.6, round up as necessary. We're just trying to get precision, as accurate as you can be. And you do want to take an average. So get that ruler, measure in a few spots, and then call it a day. We use this graphic as an example to re-emphasize not measuring drifts. So if we do have some dry snow around here and it's real drifty, don't pick a spot like this. Look where it's kind of flat and even. Don't expect you to do long division, but again, take a couple measurements, whatever the average is, and that should be good. Measuring on the grass is perfectly fine. A deck is not bad either, in the sense that it's a hard object. As soon as you hit the deck, you're not going down into grass blades or dirt. You know that when you hit the deck board, it's 0. But they're usually attached to a house. So the best thing is a snowboard. Now, up north, these were much more common. I don't expect you to make these, but they're ideal because you take a deck surface, in this case, a 2x2 of plywood, and you put this hard surface wherever the best spot is. Middle of your yard, away from the house, away from the driveway, away from the trees. Painted white so it reflects the light, you're good to go. And then certainly label it with snow sticks or little reflective sticks or flags if you can. Again, do you have to go get a snowboard and make one? No. Just measure in the grass, away from tall objects is all we're asking. But I know we do have some people pretty into the weather, so I wanted to show the snowboard part. How often should you measure? The big thing would be by the end of the storm, or give us the total. So it snows, it snows, it snows, it stops, go out there and measure. That's all we're looking for. If you're stuck at home and you want to measure more frequently, you can give us updates throughout the storm. I would say, no more than every 3, probably every 6 hours, ideally, because you don't need to measure that frequently. But the big thing, I kind of de-emphasizing that as much as when it stops snowing, go out there and measure. That's when you should measure the snow. This is an example of this. It's a Monday morning. It snows, starts to cloud over, and starts to snow at 9 o'clock. We get 2.4 inches of snow by 1 o'clock. Sun comes out. This is a typical southern snow, and it settles, it compresses. In some cases, it's gone. 1 inch, 1.2 inches by the next morning. So obviously we have school and work and life. I don't expect you to come home right at 1 o'clock, but try to measure as close to the end as possible. And again, we're just trying to re-emphasize what we're getting at. So our 800 number, I mentioned that this is really important to report information to us, and this is the most important way to do it. You're going to get this in an email. You see it on your screen now. Put it in your phone. You usually don't lose your phone, but you might lose a piece of paper and things like that. So this is a special number. We give this out just to our spotters. We expect a report when you call this number. So don't call this for forecasts. Don't call this to report sunshine or temperatures. This is, hey, I got snow, tornadoes, hail, that type of thing. When you call us, you're going to notice a certain procedure we want you to go through. Who you are. Hey, I'm a train spotter, Onslow County, Carteret County. Where you live. I live in Newport, Richlands, Jacksonville, Pink Hill. I reported 3.7 inches of snow, and I measured it at what time. All good information. You might say, wow, Eric, you guys are really detailed. We want you to do this process so that when you have a tornado, hopefully not, you have large hail, and it's very urgent. Every second counts. We want you to do it just like that. Hey, I'm a train spotter for Carteret County. I'm reporting a tornado on the ground. It's now, and I want to give you a heads up. Just that easy. So that's why we kind of reemphasize 800 number is the best way to report because we can ask you questions. It rings 24/7. We have multiple lines. I'm going to talk about social media and some other ways, but we're not always monitoring that like we are picking up the phone. So in summary, a nice level place away from trees or tall objects, slide the ruler into the snow or the snowboard, take an average, newly fallen snow. So again, how much snow fell with the most recent storm, nearest 1/10 of an inch, and that is good for us. So I mentioned the 800 number is our most preferred way. Hands down, please call us on the 800 number. I'm going to show you a couple other ways. We use these as supplemental. Hey, I've got X amount of snow, but I want to send you some video. I want to show you some pictures. Email us, weatherobs, wxobs.mhx@noaa.gov. Same procedure, who you are, where you live, your observation, and the time. And again, the 800 number, we're going to talk about Cocoa Raws, all of that is going to be in your email here coming up. We mentioned when to report any amount of snow. So even flurries are noteworthy where we live, so give us a call. If you have amounts, call at the end. And if you have some additional things, hey, it hasn't stopped yet, but we got 1 inch in the last 2 hours, last hour. That's noteworthy to let us know. As far as ice goes, the surface it's accumulating on, we've got freezing rain, we've got sleet, the roads are bad. That's very good information. Not overly concerned with you marching out in ice to measure it. If you want to, there's a couple different ways. One is around a cylinder. That's called radial ice. That's probably the easiest way to do it. That's the way I do it. So it sounds all fancy, but all you do is you go to your nearest crepe myrtle or tree branch and see how much ice has accumulated. And on this example, you do have to subtract the tree branch itself so that it's not the whole thing. So in this case, and you're still doing an average. So in this case, 5/16 is what's reported because they've got 3/16 on the left side of the branch, 7/16 on the right. So the average is 5/16, and 5 divided by 16 is 0.3. So that's how they came up with that. Again, this is in your handout. I don't expect you to remember all this. Flat ice is easier in the sense that you just do a ruler, but it's really hard to get ice to accumulate like that. It's much more likely for it to accumulate on tree branches. So radial is probably the easier way. Whatever way you do, just tell us, hey, this is radial ice or flat, because it will be different in terms of thickness. Another way you can report on our website, if you scroll down, you can submit storm reports. It's a nice Google form. It's decent, but the general public can report that way too. And there's not a spot to say that you're a spotter. Speaking of that, I think I can probably change that, and I should. It's a way to report. If you want to do it that way, fine. But again, really would prefer hearing your voice. Then we can ask you questions for any clarification. What else to report? Tornadoes, wind damage, hail, more than an inch of rain. You might say, well, Eric, you didn't cover that. That is in our spring class. All that training is on our website, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So we're just trying to mention that we want year-round spotters. It's going to be really rare, luckily, that you have tornadoes or hail. But by getting used to reporting snow, and maybe we get you into Cocoa Raws and you report more frequently, you're used to reporting year-round. Twitter and Facebook, feel free to post pictures and videos, reports there as well, but call us. This is more like the email follow up, say, hey, I got this great picture, I'll put it on Facebook. If you're really into the weather, consider joining Cocoa Raws. This link will be put in your email. It's a more consistent program where you need to purchase a rain gauge, not a digital rain gauge, not an automated rain gauge, about $30 to $35. However, it's an awesome program. If you're a weather enthusiast, if you're a young person wants to get into meteorology, this is a program for you. Every day between 7 and 9, you go outside, you see if it rained, if it snowed. If it snowed, you melt it down. All those things are in the training slideshow on the website. You're going to recognize the slides because I love them, so they're in our presentation. Where to buy a rain gauge, how to join, all on this website. I highly suggest getting the app. My son and I will go outside, see how much rain, boom, put it in the app, takes 30 seconds. Most days you're going to be logging in and reporting 0. So it takes no more than a minute of your time every day. Again, for those that are super into the weather, I really, really recommend it. Another one, if you have a mobile device, MPing. If you're a big fan of radar, I'm not recommending anyone, but there's apps like Radar Scope and others that have this on it already, so you may already be doing this, or you can download it in the App Store and Google Play. It's a precipitation app, so you can say if it's raining, snowing, hailing, and it's a pretty neat, it was started many years ago, back in 2014, when the radar was upgraded to dual polarization, and it was to see how it was doing, and it's still taken off. A lot of people use this. I got a kick out of it the other day. My mechanic brought it up, having the app, and I didn't even mention it. So I thought that was pretty cool that a lot of folks are using that. And again, you can't report snow amounts, but it is precipitation type. So we're just about done here. Again, the 800 number is the most preferred way. Those are other ways. We didn't mention amateur radio. Occasionally, if there's a big storm, especially ice storm or heavy snow where communication could be an issue, we certainly can bring those folks in to help us man the amateur radio net. So down the road, for those that this is your first class, or maybe for some of you, those repeat people, you may not realize we offer a lot of these. Our 4 biggies are basic spring, which is the opposite of this, hail, high winds, tornadoes, and winter. These are our 2 predominant classes. Probably 75% of our schedule are these 2. But because of popular demand, we do a 3rd one called flood and tropical. We talk about flooding and historic hurricanes. And the advanced class is a follow-up to basic. It's usually in May. It's kind of our gift to you. We go into dual pole, hook echoes, really, really in depth, because we've already covered reporting. So we want you to really make sure that you get a little bit back for helping us do that. All of this training is on YouTube right now. If you can't get enough of it, NWS Morehead City, we've got playlists and videos, and our goal is that you report year-round, as I mentioned. So I'm going to wrap things up and turn it over to you. This is my email. It's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Shoot me an email if you have any questions. If you don't have a pen with you, again, we're going to send you an email tonight. The certificate included in that, all the links we talked about, and then you'll have an email from me. So if you have any questions, that would be fine.